Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Voicetrax podcast. I'm Samantha Paris. You know, when we started these podcasts, it was very important to me to do some myth busting on having to have a, quote, great voice to do voiceover. I really wanted to drive home the point that every voice is a great voice, that all of our voices are perfect, and that there is a place for everyone in this industry. All right, well, I think mission accomplished. So now what? Where do we go from here? If voiceover is not about your voice, what is it about? Okay, all you Voicetrax students out there listening, on the count of 3, let's all answer that question. 1, 2, 3.
It's all about acting!
Yeah, it is acting. But who let these guys in here? Anyway, it's funny. A lot of people just don't realize that. I can't tell you how many times in my personal life I'm asked what I do for a living, and I always say the same thing. I have a training academy in Sausalito where I teach people how to do voiceover work. Well, usually I get a blank stare, so then I say, you know, when you hear voices on the TV or radio doing commercials or voices that you hear doing cartoons or video games or like a TV documentary? Yeah, that's voiceover work. Well, then their response is, oh, you're a voice coach. You mean you teach proper pronunciation and breathing? I look at them and I smile and I say, not exactly. I'm actually an acting coach, but it's learning how to act just with your voice. And their response nearly every time is, really? I didn't think you needed to know how to act to do that. Well, now to bust that myth wide open, Voicetrax introduces our resident acting coach, Frank Coppola.
One of the first things I always hear, whether it's from the beginners in the class or from people in the world out there when I say I teach acting for voiceover, is they say, you know, someone told me I have a good voice and that I should get into voiceovers. But as Sam said, every voice is good. Every voice is distinct. Every voice is different. And we don't want to minimize that. That's important. But you have to know how to act. I mean, if you just listen to any of the voiceovers that are on television or on the radio commercials now, you can identify the actors. Actors who have won Emmy Awards, Academy Awards, are doing voiceovers. They know how to act for the mic. They know how to do a 30-second spot, a 60-second spot. They know how to do the games. It is about acting. You have to know how to act to create the characters that you do in a voiceover.
And it doesn't matter what kind of voiceover it is. If you've got to make a character choice of some kind, if you're just convincing somebody else to buy a certain brand of shampoo, no less than, you know, if you're playing a role in Death of a Salesman.
You're telling a story.
Telling a story, which actually kind of brings us right to the subject, which are the next podcasts that we're going to be doing. The March, April, and May podcasts are actually going to be recreating radio dramas. Proof positive that voiceover work necessarily involves a bit of acting.
One of the scripts is specifically a satire, a parody of early radio dramas. The other script is an actual radio drama from the early 40s. And the third script is about a young man who's finding himself in Los Angeles in contemporary times. So the acting styles in script number 1 is one way. The acting style in script number 2 is another way. The acting style in script number 3 is another way. And the students who are in the class are all playing several roles. So they're going to be in the different scripts. So they're picking up acting skills that they're going to use in anything that they do. So if they come into the booth and they have to do a 30-second spot, they're going to be thinking about what they learned in that radio drama class, and that is going to apply to selling some, dare I say, toilet paper or, you know, underarm deodorant or whatever the hell they're selling. But they will be able to use those skills.
As a matter of fact, there's a student in your class right now, Vicky Baum, who's very happy with what she's picking up from the class.
The class isn't even over yet, and I'm already on my daily auditions applying the beats, the intentions, all these things that Frank is reminding us and really drilling into our head about the acting. I'm taking that and applying it to all my auditions across all genres that I work in.
Now, there's this whole process to putting one of these things together. I mean, it kind of recreates a lot of the technical challenges we voice actors face on a routine basis. We're doing video games, for instance, without partners. We've got to do our lines, even though they play in scenes, in isolation. And something that presents similar challenges is that you're actually doing these radio podcasts kind of like a movie, out of sequence.
Right. Originally, these would have been done live, and it would have been 22 minutes, 23 minutes of actors standing in a studio, maybe 6 actors sharing 2 mics or 3 mics, and they would do it live. Everything got put on the air, recorded for, rebroadcast later, and mistakes, everything would happen there. And as they progressed with them, they started to record them. And most of the times, they would record them in sequence. They would be live because it costs money to get actors into a studio and pay an engineer and rent a studio, all of that. And when we were looking at this and doing it as a class, I thought to get 3 radio dramas recorded within the time that we had for the class, the best way to do it would be to use the movie technique, because you just get everyone who's in one scene in the booth. Then if they're in another scene a little bit later, even though it's out of sequence, they do that scene. So it's easier to get the actors who are in a scene into the booth and have them do all of their scenes. Get them out of the booth, get the other actors in. It's a real challenge for the actors.
That's the question I was going to ask you next.
Yeah, and I think it's terrific training for actors because in the classes that I teach, I always say, patience is what we have to have as actors because it becomes very technical. I mean, we could do whatever we can do with our voices if we're doing voiceover. If we're on camera, we prepare all that we can. But once you get to the gig and you're doing it, it's about the technical end of things. The mics don't sound right. Let's try something else. And they're moving very quickly. And we, as actors, we have to be ready for anything. We have to be ready to shift gears and shift gears immediately.
It sounds curiously, oddly, like the way you need to be prepared for pretty much anything that you do in a voiceover gig.
In real life, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That. I mean, you have to be ready, and they don't give you much rehearsal time. You're just, if you're doing on-camera work, you're in, you do a couple of run-throughs just for camera blocking really quickly, and you're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when you get into a booth. It's quick, it's fast, and you have to move quick and fast, but you have to wait. You have to wait and wait your turn, ready to go in, and you have to wait while they do all the technical stuff.
It's funny because, that's the exact auditioning process. When you go to an agency, you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and then when you're finally pulled in,
you better be ready.
That's right.
You better be ready. And I always say to actors, don't get caught up in that waiting room social jargon out there. Hey, pal, how you doing? Did you get that last audition? I haven't seen you. And then you're wasted when you go into the booth, And actors, and I've been telling the actors here at night that even though they're sitting here waiting for their scene, you have to be ready to go.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that you were looking forward to about this is just what a vivid demonstration it is that any kind of noteworthy voiceover is interlocked with acting. You cannot have one without the other.
I loved it. It always goes back to acting. And I love the fact that in addition to picking up acting skills in the radio drama class for podcasts, that the actors are going to learn a lot of things. They had to go through an audition period for this. That means getting ready for the audition, working on whatever it is you're doing, and being happy that you got it or being disappointed that you didn't get it.
Yeah.
That's all part of it.
Yeah,
that is
true.
all part of it. I have an interesting story. I think it's an interesting story.
Go ahead.
I was working down in L.A., and things were not too great for me. I had just started off in L.A., and I was waiting on tables. And I started to get commercials, on-camera commercials. And one of the waitresses there, because all the waiters and waitresses in Hollywood are all, aspiring actors, gorgeous young woman. She came up to me, and she was from the South, and she said, "I just love what you're doing." She said, "I want to do that. How do I do that?" And I said, "Start taking acting classes." She thought it was something that you just did by looking pretty.
Right.
Just go into the casting call because you look pretty. And sometimes you get it because you're pretty, and sometimes you get it because you're pretty and you know how to act.
Yeah. And that brings us right back home. You cannot lean on sounding pretty to have a voiceover career.
No.
Thank you very much, Frank. Appreciate you stopping in to answer some questions for us.
Thank you, Chuck. It's a pleasure.